Hi, it's Ellen Dudley from Keller Williams Realty. Today I am here talking with Hindell Grossman, a divorce attorney for over 30 years. Hindell has offices in Newton, Hingham, and Nantucket, and today we're going to talk about the divorce process. Hi Hindell, how are you?
Ellen, I'm great. It's a beautiful day.
It is a beautiful day. We've got to get outside. So
Indeed.
I thought I would speak to you today. Obviously, a lot of people have been stuck inside for a few months due to COVID-19, and they may have realized that they don't want to stay living with the people they are living with, particularly the spouse, I guess. Um,
Not necessarily the children, although that could happen too.
you can't really get rid of them as easily.
Yeah, that's right.
So, they realize that they may not be in the best marriage and they might want to think about divorce. And I was just wondering, what would they do first? If someone found themselves in that circumstance, who do they call? What do they do?
Well, they gather information. I mean, certainly all this has maybe impacted some people's decisions, and choosing to get a divorce is something that usually takes a long time for people to reach a conclusion about. This may have, this COVID and all this quarantining together may have accelerated people's decision making on that. But of course, being together makes it more difficult to do the kind of research you need to do in order to know what to expect when you're divorcing. Do the court close? They're not closed, but access to the court is a little more limited. So people are, nervous about whether they start. If they start it now, what will happen? So we can move forward right now on filing divorce actions. The courts are still operating, although not taking people in person. So what you do is gather information. I mean, now's the perfect time if you have the time. A lot of people have less time at home while they're, homeschooling children and handling all kinds of things in the household. But a good time to start gathering information about your life. So for example, your finances, all of the accounts, the account numbers, balances, retirement accounts, bank accounts, investment accounts. Look up what you think might be the value of your house, which of course you could be helpful with as a local realtor. Figure out what the balance is on the mortgage to figure out maybe how much equity is in the house. Just information gathering is the best thing. Now, when you're stuck together inside, privacy is a little more of an issue, and it's harder for people to do this kind of research undetected. That is something, of course, that might limit people's ability to gather this information. But if possible, it's just a task that is necessary in order to first, maybe make decisions about divorcing, and second, in order to get through the divorce, it's something that needs to be done anyway. Also look at liabilities, credit card statements, credit card balances, kind of charges. Those are the kinds of things that a person should start looking at and should know about anyway, whether they're getting divorced or not. So it's useful information. Are you there?
Yeah, those are great suggestions. Yeah.
So those are things that are needed. And often in a marriage, I find, sadly, there's often one spouse who knows relatively little about the finances. And it's particularly important for that spouse to start doing their homework, so to speak, and getting involved with the finances of the marriage. Now, it may be a little late to start inserting themselves as a financial decision maker if they intend to stay married, although, sometimes people get divorced because of financial reasons, and maybe it's time to learn about them and be involved if possible. But if a person has decided to get a divorce, then it's even more important to know about the finances, because as they get split up as a result of the divorce, a person will have control of those financial decisions and able to make them good or bad on their own. So first we need to know what there is.
Got it.
What is the pot of assets and liabilities we're dealing with? So it's a good time to really get your arms around that information. That's what I'd say is the first step.
And obviously, you and I know the several ways you can handle a divorce. You can litigate, you can mediate, you can have collaborative divorce. How do you think that just comes from Googling for the general public? You think they just have to Google and find out how to handle a divorce?
Well, it's a really good point, Ellen, because there are lots of alternatives to litigation, litigation being, letting judge make decisions about everything. And it can be a blend. I mean, you can go to have the judge make some decisions, and you can still use a mediator to decide, to help the spouses decide other things. So explaining to clients the options is a little complicated. I actually have a chart that I use when I was able to meet with people, where I would explain each of the different procedural options. So when I meet with a client, I talked about process options and substantive options. Substantive being how much, in support, how much in child support, how do you divide the assets and liabilities. Process is the choice between mediation, litigation, collaborative law, conciliation, the cost of those things, the time frame for those things, and the blend among those different processes with each other, the interaction with each other. So just briefly, because access to the court is more limited, I mean, mediation is a really good option right now. Mediators are using Zoom and breakout rooms that Zoom, can accommodate in order to mediate divorces. Now, sharing documents that way is a little more challenging, but it can be done. It has been done. So mediation, I think we'll see an uptick. I actually was trained as a mediator. I just completed my training a few weeks ago. I did it during the quarantine. Figured it was a good use of my time, 40 hours of training. And I can certainly see the value. So the mediator is a neutral person who facilitates the conversation between the spouses to reach hopefully relatively happy conclusion for both of them. If mediation works, it's a great way to resolve a divorce and many other kinds of disputes as well. If mediation doesn't work, each spouse would learn something about each other's position. They certainly will learn more about the assets and liabilities of the household during that process, and they can still retain attorneys and use, plan B potentially, which is litigation, or conciliation could be plan B, which is different than mediation, or something else, just the attorneys can negotiate or the spouses can negotiate. All of those are options along the way. So I think, court access physical court access, as I said, is limited, but the judges are having hearings by Zoom and teleconference. So, it's always been harder to litigate and more expensive to litigate. So to the extent that these other procedural options are available and of interest, it's great. Some people feel like they are not well equipped to mediate on their own because they are not good at negotiating on their own or standing up for themselves. So they feel like they're in a compromised situation. So maybe that's not the right kind of process for that kind of divorce. So it depends on the personalities and it depends on the kind of mediator they choose.
And how does one choose a divorce attorney? I mean, first they have to choose which method they prefer, or do they just start interviewing different people they get the names of? How does one choose?
That's a great question. I mean, when you choose a divorce attorney, you're choosing someone to really disclose a lot of very personal information to. And when I'm selected, I'm retained by someone, I feel very privileged that they retain me because they are willing to trust me in an enormous way with information that they probably haven't disclosed to anyone else. It's not necessarily the kind of thing that they tell their best friends or their family or their parents, so I get to ask, I have the license to ask, I call it, really personal kinds of questions about their lives, their married lives, not just finances, but parenting and, often, not often, but sometimes, frequently, there is an infidelity. So I get, I ask questions about that. Choosing a divorce attorney means that the person is really trusted and their attorney. And I suggest that people interview, that people going through divorce interview a few attorneys before they make a selection. It's a very personal relationship and they need to feel like that person's got their back. My attitude about representing clients is I want them to really feel trusted and embraced and supported during the process, not just in a legal way or financial way, but also emotionally. Psychology is a very important part of the divorce process, understanding both sides, how they're going to react to things, and sometimes even preventing my own client from doing something that seems vindictive and not productive, and trying to convince my client. I have a situation like that going on right now, where we're on the verge of settlement, but one side just is a hard time pulling, getting to across the finish line. And I have to figure out creative ways to make them feel comfortable about that. Most people are very eager to get their divorces over with. I have a philosophy about that, which is that sometimes relaxing into the process results in a better divorce agreement because people get time to experiment with each stage. Now, separating now is during the pandemic is really a challenging part of getting divorced right this moment because somebody might have to leave the marital home, and going out to rent an apartment is something a lot of people don't want to go do right now. But people will adjust. I feel like it's important to. The first really big hurdle is getting over the separation or managing the separation.
Right. And so if one spouse does leave the home and rents an apartment, how do they handle what happens with the children? It's just a separation time. It's nothing formal. They haven't filed anything. But especially with older children who maybe, want to stay where they are at their home and don't want to go to an apartment, or how do you advise people on managing that?
Well, obviously we're in strange times here with the pandemic. So going back and forth, a lot of parenting issues have come up over these past couple of months because one parent will be fearful. I mean, these are people who have already separated where the children would have to go back and forth between two households, and one or both parents are concerned for health reasons of the children going back and forth, or one parent might feel like the other parent isn't careful enough about protecting the kids from the virus. So we're in strange times, and obviously this will be behind us one day. But these issues do come up even without a virus informing the process. So it is difficult, particularly with older kids, teenagers. Once they're 18, it's up to the person, adult, at that point, since they're adults, which parent they want to go visit. I had a situation actually just today I'm working on where the mother didn't drop the daughter off, for the father's visit. I represent the dad. And, he wants to file a complaint for contempt, which is the result. Now, in this case, mothers might say, or fathers might say, if the situation was reversed, that the child didn't want to go, and what are they going to do about it? So it is a very difficult thing when a kid comes to the kids being like 16, 17 years old, when they kind of vote with their feet. As I was saying before about experimenting and slowing down the process a little bit, with parenting, it's kind of, I like the experiment with parenting plans so that we can see how it works, how it goes. As kids go back to school and our lives resume some sort of normalcy again, the way they were. These are, parenting time is more important and is easier to make it a little more rigid, although flexibility in parenting is important. It's up to each parent to emphasize to the children the importance of having a relationship with the other spouse, with the other parent, sorry. And it is challenged. There's no answer to that question, unfortunately. I wish I had a pill for someone to take that forces one parent to bring their child to the other parents, but the children sometimes vote with their feet and are resistant, and it's up to both parents to encourage relationships with the other, good or bad. I mean, some parents disagree with the other parenting style, but nevertheless, it's important for the children to have relationships with both sides. And as I said, I like doing things in baby steps, trying this parenting plan or that parenting plan to see which one works. Often people will, be very ambitious about how much time they want to spend with the child, and in reality they can't, or they won't, or they're not that interested, or they're not interested in changing their lifestyle to accommodate the kids' needs. That comes up. Kids sense that sometimes, if one parent doesn't want to take them here or there, and the kid says, well, I'm going to stay with the other parent because at least they're going to take me where I want to go. Now, is that a sign of a spoiled child, or is that an entitled child, or is that a sign of just a child who wants a responsive parent, supportive parent? It's hard to know. Every situation is different. Long answer.
Yeah.
No magic
No, you're
answer.
right.
I'm sorry.
I would hate to be a judge that has to decide these things.
Parenting plans are really challenging, really challenging. And you have to build in flexibility because things come up, you know?
Right, right.
That changes. And the children's lives change and parents' lives change and, you know, their work schedules change and pandemics happen and, you know.
Right, right. Everything's always changing. The only constant is change, right?
Yeah, things are unexpected.
Um, all right. Well, Hindell, I could talk about this all day. It's so interesting to me, but I like to keep these videos brief. I know that you offer, you do what is it, a monthly podcast that you do?
Yeah, every month we post a new podcast interview on the 15th of the month. So in May, our podcast, I interviewed Sammy Azuz, who just wrote a book. He's a financial planner. But, you know, everyone I've interviewed and every podcast we post has to do with divorce. So there are a lot of people, a lot of professionals involved in the divorce world, from people from, you know, college coaches, how to maximize you know, scholarships and grant money and student loans while people are divorced, from divorced parents, helping parents figure out how to maximize financial aid, to financial planners, to therapists, to mediators. I mean, there are just a lot of people. So right now I have 40 podcasts posted as of May 2020, and I'll post another one in June. So they're all interesting, I find. They're about a half an hour long.
And how does someone find it?
On my website, which is grossmanltd.com, there's a tab at the top called podcasts. So click on that and then choose one of the podcasts to listen to. That's how you find it.
Okay. And I know you also do Wednesday Words of Wisdom. And since today's Wednesday, maybe we could have a sneak peek at that.
A sneak peek is this. Suspicion is high during a divorce. Don't give reasons to make it worse by withholding documents, payments, or being otherwise secretive. Because when suspicion even gets higher, it's naturally high to begin with, but once you give reasons to be suspicious, it's hard to get rid of it. It's like changing your reputation. Once you lose your reputation, it's hard to get it back. When someone's suspicious of you, it's hard to regain trust. So I suggest that it's probably better to be generally forthcoming with information during the divorce to avoid this increase of suspicion in order to maintain as much trust as possible in the process. Those are my words of wisdom for today.
Thank you very much. Very good advice. I appreciate you joining me on this video, and I will post your website and contact information at the end.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much. Be well.
Okay. Enjoy the day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.